It says it is when we subject you to test that we are able to establish who is truth, who is true to his claims, i.e. his claims of beliefs, as opposed to those who are only liars, i.e. they claim that we are believers, but when tribulations come, you find that it is only on the tongue that they are believers. So how is this counseling to us? It is in that whenever you would remind yourself during trial and tribulation that this is my test from Allah, this is my examination. Now Allah wants to know whether I am one of those who are truly believers, as opposed to those who are only claiming to be believers. Then, when you remind yourself of this, your heart will be at peace and you would accept the trial that Allah has brought your way. So this is Allah counseling us before he would subject us to trial. And that ayat, that surah from the very beginning, is a surah of counseling for the inevitable trial and tribulation. In Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah again counsels us with words I would tend to describe as the ultimate counseling. Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah, Asa an takra'u shay'a wa huwa khayrun lakum wa asa an tuhibbu shay'a wa huwa sharrun lakum wallahu ya'lamu wa antum la ta'lamun. Meaning that you may find yourself in a situation that you love. As far as I am concerned, this is the best thing that could happen to me right now. Sorry. You may find yourself in a situation that you detest. And as far as you are concerned, this is the worst thing that could happen to me now. وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. Allah says, it may well be good for you. وَعَسَىٰ أَن تُحِبُّ شَيْئًا. And other times, you will find yourself in situations that you love. As far as I am concerned, this is the best thing that could happen to me right now. Oh Allah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, I love my life right now. I love this situation. Allah says, وَأُوَ شَرٌ لَكُمْ. It may well be bad for you. And then he goes on to say, وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Only your Lord knows that which is good for you, and you do not know. All of us, I'm sure we'll be able to relate this to our lives or to the lives of people that we have known over the years who have been in situations that they thought, oh, wonderful, and it turns out that it is indeed bad for them. You know, there's no day I will recite this ayat that I will not remember our father, Chief MKO Abiola. May Allah be pleased with him. May he accept him into the company of the righteous. MKO had everything, at least everything that mankind could wish for. But one thing remained. He wanted to be the #1 citizen of his country. And I say one thing remained for him because it may not necessarily remain, but he perceived it as remaining. And Islamically, there is nothing wrong with that. Muslims are expected, indeed required, to be ambitious. So he was only ambitious. He wanted to be the president of his country. But ultimately, it became clear to us that that which he desired, and he actually got it because Nigerians voted for him. Officially, he was to become the president of the country, but upon that singular ambition, he lost everything that he ever had. He lost his freedom, remaining in incarceration for years, and ultimately, he lost his life upon it as well. So, long term, it became clear that that which he desired and was actually granted to him was actually bad for him. But again, was it actually bad for him? It is equally telling you how it is arguable that it wasn't bad for him. And this is where the wisdom of Allah comes into things, and we can never question it, right? Now, he was in incarceration. He was in prison for a long time. So he could not sin anymore. If you like, this may be Allah cleansing him of the many sins that he must have committed. The same MKO had a reputation for being bad with ladies. And there is nobody of our age who would not have known of this or known of him in that regard. He was known to be very careless with ladies, right? Now, Allah put him away where he couldn't be careless with ladies anymore and where he couldn't commit sins anymore. And then when mankind said that freedom has come, it is time for you to go back to the world. To which world? To the world of sins. He was on the verge of gaining his freedom, and then Allah called him up. Ibadallah, it may well be that calling him up, as Allah did on that occasion, was the means by which Allah was going to make him an inmate of Jannah, of an inmate of Al-Jannah. If that was the reason that Allah caused his life to end at that point in time, then ultimately it was actually good for him. So, whereas we could argue in human terms that what happened to him was bad for him, it is equally arguable in spiritual terms that what happened to him was actually good for him. Because he was cleansed of his faith, of his sins. His relationship with his Lord was renewed. And then when he was about to have the freedom, the wherewithal to commit sins, again, Allah took him up. By the wisdom of Allah, it may well be that this is the only way by which this person is going to taste and remain in my Jannah. So ultimately, it may well be good for him. The third and final aspect of the Quran that I want to look at, excuse me, let me just grab a copy of the Quran. I'm just going to be opening this. As some of our brothers are aware, I was in Dubai for educational purpose between late last year and then the end of January this year. In the course of my trip to Dubai, I had to memorize Surah Al-Dariyat. That is chapter, sorry, let me skip what chapter it is. I have to memorize Surah Al-Dariyat, and the Surah Al-Dariyat, I think it has 60. It has 60 ayats, and then the first 23 ayats, I memorized it with the meanings and with the commentaries, and then it didn't give me much, as we would say in England, other than learning a new surah. But when I got to ayah 24, then my interest suddenly, I was gripped by ayah 24. And from ayah 24 to ayah 30, my interest in the surah multiplied. Now, this is Quran as a book of stories that I'm talking about now. What does Allah says from ayah 24? A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. هل أتاك حديث ضيف إبراهيم المكرمين إذ دخلوا عليه فقالوا سلاما قال سلام قوم منكرون فراغ إلى أهله فجاء بعجل سمين. To the end of ayah 30. Now, all of us are familiar with the story of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam, how he stayed for a long time without a child. And all of us are aware of how it was relayed to him that Allah was going to bless him with a child. So it's a familiar story, except that in this ayat, in this set of ayat, about 6 ayats, Allah paints the pictures of how that good news was relayed to him. And reading the ayats and the meanings and the commentaries, it was for me as if I was watching a film. It was as if I was seeing Ibrahim in front of me. It was as if I was seeing the angels in front of him. And it was as if I was seeing the mother or the wife of Ibrahim. So Allah says, "Hal ataka hadithu dhayfi Ibrahim al-mukramin," that as the story reached you of the honored guest of Ibrahim. Who are the honored guests of Ibrahim? This is why the commentaries of the Quran are just as important, because in this ayat, the guests are not named, they are not mentioned. It was Jibril alayhi salatu wassalam and 2 other angels that Allah sent to Ibrahim, right? So, al-ataka hadithu dhayfi Ibrahim al-mukramin. As the story reached you of the honored guest of Ibrahim, iddakhalu alayhi faqalu salama. When they entered unto him, and they said to him, salam, meaning, salamu alaykum. Qala salamun qawmun munkarun. And Ibrahim said in return that salam to you too, O people that I do not know, you strangers, salam to you too. So you can picture Ibrahim and these angels in front of him. And so Ibrahim, he turned to his people, to his family. What he has brought to them, right? And Ibrahim got amazed with this, that what kind of guests are these that we are offering something to and they are not going to touch it. So Ibrahim became fearful that these are very strange people that I don't know from anywhere, who let them in. I found them suddenly upon me and they are greeting me, and then I am offering them entertainment and they are refusing to touch the entertainment. So the surah, the ayat continues that they saw, the angels saw that Ibrahim had fear in him, and they say to Ibrahim, do not fear. We have only brought a good news to you. Meanwhile, the wife was in the inner part of the house, and she was listening to the conversation between her husband and these strange visitors. And then she heard that they have brought a good news. What good news? They said, I'm looking for the ayat. My eyes is not doing me well, so I'm not immediately picking it out. Wabasharu bigulamin alim, right? Fa'awjaza minhum khifa قالوا لا تخف وبشروه بغلام عليم. So they perceived the fear in him and they told him, do not fear. We have bring with a lady. Listen to what happened next. فأقبلت امرأته في سرة فصكت وجهها وقالت عجوز عقيم. Remember, his wife was in the inner part of the house. But the moment she heard these strange visitors telling her husband that he was going to be blessed with a child, she rushed out and saying in a loud voice, that is exactly what the Quran is saying in a loud voice, that am I going to have a child even though I am old and I am barren? Ajuzun Hakim, that I am old and I am barren. How am I going to have a child? Listen to what the angel said in return. Qalu kadhalik. Say that's how it is. Qala rabbik. That is what your Lord has said. Innahu huwal hakimun alim. So the angels replied, Qalu kadhalik, to say in Yoruba, bó ṣe jẹ́ náà nìyẹn. Qala rabbik, ntí Ọlọ́run ọba rẹ̀ tí ó sọ òun nìyẹn. Innahu huwal hakimun alim, is the one al-hakim that is wise, al-alim, and the one full of knowledge as well. But listen to what happened next to know how fascinating the circumstance was. Now, having given Ibrahim this good news, he now said to the angels, now you visitors. Of course, he did not know these were angels in front of him. He says, again, to say it in Yoruba, like to say, meaning, okay, I've heard what you have said, but please now tell me what exactly is your mission. Meaning that Ibrahim did not really believe the message that was being given to him. He was old, in his 90s. His wife was old. But what was not clear to them was how Allah was going to do it, which is another story entirely, right? So Ibrahim said to them, now tell me what exactly has brought you. Now, he probably should just have taken that good news and run with it. You know, that question that he asked then made him to also hear bad news as well, meaning that we probably should not ask too many questions. So when he said to them, now tell me what has brought you, they now told him that in addition to this message that we have given you, when we live here, we are going to go and wreak destruction upon a set of people. And then they made the surah now goes out to how the people of Musa, Pharaoh, the people of Pharaoh were destroyed. The people of Thamud were destroyed. The people of Ad, how they were destroyed. And the angel said that we are going to so place and we are going to bring destruction upon them. And then, so this beautiful story now goes on to stories of sadness and destruction. Now, the personal discovery for me in the course of learning this surah is that before now, I was of the impression that, inshallah, I'm rounding up in another 5 minutes. I was of the impression that angels, when they will be sent on an assignment, they will be sent on a singular assignment to their Lord. From reading this surah, I got to know that angels can actually be sent assignments, and the assignment can be contrasting in nature as well. So, as I said, reading this ayat one by one, knowing their meanings and reading the commentaries, I now finally had a grasp of how this good news was brought to Ibrahim, what his reaction was, how he did not really believe it, how his wife came out exclaiming, and how even after having been told the good news, he asked, now tell me what has really brought you. And then how what should have ended as good news also became being told of destruction and destruction that was going to happen to people. So, brothers and sisters, this is Quran as a book of stories. And you know as well as I know that this little story is not even anything compared to the story of Prophet Yusuf, alayhi salatu wassalam, which is more fascinating. Perhaps the most fascinating story in the Quran is nothing compared to the story of Prophet Musa, alayhi salatu wassalam, and many other stories in Surah Al-Kahf. Surah Al-Kahf is a surah of stories, and really fascinating and contrasting stories as well. So again, this is the Quran as a book of stories. So find your purpose with the Quran. If you like, embrace it as a book of stories. Study all the stories, study the surahs of the stories, and then derive inspiration from them. Let somebody else embrace the Quran and connect with it as a book of dua. Study all the ayats that are to do with dua and embrace them. Let somebody else embrace the Quran as a book of counseling. And then, especially if there are amongst us people whose profession or occupation are related to counseling, let them try to extract the ayats of counseling in the Quran and try to see how Allah counsels them. What is important ultimately is that we remain connected with the Quran beyond Ramadan. We find our purpose with the Quran, and we find a personal use for ourselves with the Quran. Ultimately, the Quran is a book of guidance, and we let it become that which guides our lives. May Allah accept the little that we have said, and then reward us abundantly. May He benefit us with it, and may we derive His pleasure as a result of this. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم والسلام عليكم.